Death, the ultimate horizon of human existence. The one certainty we all share, yet the reality we most desperately avoid confronting. Welcome to our exploration of Memento Mori, the profound philosophical practice whose Latin phrase translates simply to remember that you will die. Far from being morbid or depressing, this ancient wisdom tradition offers us something remarkable: the possibility that by looking directly at our mortality, we might actually discover a more vibrant, purposeful, and meaningful life. Throughout human history, across vastly different cultures and spiritual traditions, wise men and women have recognized a paradoxical truth. Those who learn to make peace with their finite nature often live with greater intensity and clarity than those who spend their days in denial of death. The Stoics of ancient Rome, the Buddhist monks of the Himalayan mountains, the samurai warriors of feudal Japan, all incorporated contemplation of death into their practices of living well. But why begin our educational journey with something that might initially seem so uncomfortable? Because in our modern world, we've created unprecedented buffers between ourselves and the reality of our mortality. Medical advancements, cosmetic interventions, and cultural taboos have pushed death further from our everyday consciousness than at any previous point in human history. And yet, this apparent progress may have robbed us of something essential: the clarifying power that comes from acknowledging our limited time. Think about it for a moment. How would you live today if you truly understood, not just intellectually, but emotionally, that your time is finite? What priorities would shift? What fears would suddenly seem trivial? What joys would you no longer postpone? The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful men, wrote in his private journals, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Despite commanding vast armies and ruling an empire, Aurelius understood that his power was temporary, his existence fragile. Rather than causing despair, this awareness gave his decisions greater weight and meaning. Similarly, the Japanese concept of mono no aware, the pathos of things, recognizes that the impermanence of life is precisely what gives it beauty. The cherry blossoms are treasured not despite their brief flowering, but because of it. Their ephemeral nature intensifies our appreciation. Throughout this video series, we'll explore how the contemplation of death, memento mori, can paradoxically become a powerful tool for living. We'll examine psychological research showing how mortality awareness affects decision-making, relationships, and personal growth. We'll look at practical exercises from various wisdom traditions that help integrate this awareness into daily life. And we'll hear from people who've had profound encounters with mortality and emerged with transformed perspectives. But first, let's address the elephant in the room. Isn't thinking about death depressing? Won't it lead to anxiety or nihilism? These are natural concerns, but the evidence suggests something quite different. When approached with wisdom and intention, mortality awareness typically doesn't lead to despair, but to its opposite, a deeper engagement with life. Consider the findings of psychologists who study near-death experiences. People who have come close to death often report a radical shift in values. Material possessions suddenly seem trivial, while relationships and meaningful experiences take center stage. They describe a heightened appreciation for everyday wonders: the taste of food, the beauty of nature, the simple joy of being alive. In essence, they've received the gift of memento mori in dramatic fashion, and it has awakened them to life rather than diminished it. The key distinction is between morbid obsession and wise contemplation. Memento mori isn't about dwelling fearfully on the end, but about using the fact of finitude to illuminate the present moment with greater clarity and purpose. In our upcoming blocks, we'll delve deeper into specific practices, from the Stoic exercise of negative visualization to the Bhutanese tradition of contemplating death 5 times daily. We'll explore how different personalities might approach mortality awareness in ways that suit their temperament, and we'll examine how this ancient wisdom applies to modern challenges, from career decisions to digital distraction to environmental crisis. For now, I invite you to simply hold this question. What would change if you lived with a clearer awareness of life's brevity? Not as a source of anxiety, but as a clarifying lens that brings your true priorities into sharper focus. As we proceed through this journey together, remember that Memento Mori isn't about learning how to die. It's about learning how to live with greater intention, appreciation, and courage. By looking directly at what we fear most, we often discover unexpected freedom. As we've seen, the practice of memento mori offers us not a morbid obsession, but a pathway to living with greater clarity and purpose. Now, let's journey across time and cultures to discover how different civilizations have embraced this profound wisdom, creating rituals and practices that transform their relationship with mortality. Throughout human history, wisdom traditions worldwide have recognized that confronting death enhances life. These weren't abstract philosophical concepts, but embodied practices woven into the fabric of daily existence. By examining these traditions, we can extract timeless insights that remain remarkably relevant to our modern condition. Let's begin in ancient Rome, where the Stoic philosophers developed sophisticated practices around mortality awareness. When a Roman general returned victorious from battle and paraded through cheering crowds, a slave would stand behind him, whispering continuously in his ear, "Memento mori." Remember that you will die. This wasn't meant to diminish his triumph, but to preserve his humility and perspective amid glory. The reminder served as an anchor to reality during moments when ego might otherwise swell dangerously. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, banquets sometimes featured a peculiar custom that might shock modern sensibilities. Amidst the feasting and celebration, servants would carry a wooden sculpture of a corpse, showing it to each guest while reciting, "Look upon this, drink, and be merry, for when you are dead, you shall be like this." Rather than dampening the festivities, this practice was intended to intensify them, to remind revelers that pleasure should be savored precisely because it is temporary. In medieval Japan, the samurai warriors developed a particularly intense relationship with death. The Hagakure, a famous manual of Bushido, the way of the warrior, instructs, "The way of the samurai is found in death. When it comes to either or, there is only the quick choice of death." This wasn't a nihilistic surrender, but a radical acceptance that freed the warrior from hesitation and fear. By mentally accepting death each morning, the samurai could paradoxically live more fully, with decisions unhindered by the desperate clinging to safety. Tibetan Buddhism offers perhaps the most elaborate practices of death contemplation in human history. For centuries, monks have engaged in maranasati, mindfulness of death, through various visualizations. In one powerful practice, they visualize their own corpse going through stages of decomposition, returning to the elements. Far from generating disgust or fear, these meditations are designed to cultivate profound insights into impermanence and non-attachment. Many practitioners report that, after such meditations, they experience heightened appreciation for simple pleasures, the taste of tea, the warmth of sunlight, the presence of friends. Even in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, we find the Aztec concept of teotl, the pervasive energy that flows through all existence, including death. Their elaborate Day of the Dead celebrations weren't about denying death's reality, but integrating it into the community's understanding of life's cyclical nature. The skulls and skeletons that characterize these festivities weren't symbols of fear, but reminders of the continuous dance between life and death. What's striking about these diverse traditions is their remarkable similarity in conclusion that facing death enhances life. Despite emerging from radically different cultural contexts, these wisdom traditions converged on the understanding that mortality awareness, properly cultivated, leads not to despair but to liberation. But what distinguishes these historical practices from unhealthy obsession with death? The key difference lies in intention and integration. These weren't morbid fixations, but regular, contained contemplations designed to reorient perspective. They were practiced within supportive community structures and spiritual frameworks that helped individuals metabolize the emotional intensity of facing finitude. Perhaps most importantly, these traditions understood something our modern psychology is only beginning to verify empirically: that avoidance of death awareness doesn't eliminate anxiety. It merely pushes it underground where it manifests in neurotic behaviors, excessive materialism, or desperate pursuits of symbolic immortality through fame or achievement. The wisdom of these ancient practices suggests an alternative: that by looking directly at what we fear most, we might transcend that fear altogether. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "He who learns to die unlearns to be a slave." By accepting mortality, we free ourselves from the thousand petty fears that otherwise constrain our choices and diminish our joy. As we move forward in our exploration, we'll examine how these historical practices might be adapted for contemporary life. We'll look at how modern psychology is rediscovering the benefits of mortality awareness through research on terror management theory and post-traumatic growth. And we'll consider how these ancient insights might help us navigate uniquely modern challenges, from digital distraction to environmental crisis. For now, consider this question: which of these historical approaches resonates most with your temperament? The Stoics' pragmatic reminder, the Buddhists' contemplative visualization, or perhaps the celebratory integration found in traditions like the Day of the Dead? There is no single correct way to practice Memento Mori. The key is finding an approach that speaks to your unique sensibility. Having journeyed through the rich tapestry of historical practices, we now turn to a fascinating question: what does modern science tell us about these ancient wisdom traditions? As it turns out, contemporary psychological research has begun to validate what philosophers and spiritual teachers have intuited for millennia. In the late 20th century, a groundbreaking framework called terror management theory emerged from the work of cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker and psychologists Sheldon Solomon, Jeff Greenberg, and Tom Pyszczynski. Their research demonstrated something remarkable. Our awareness of mortality fundamentally shapes human behavior, often in ways we don't consciously recognize. Their experiments revealed that when subtly reminded of death, people tend to cling more strongly to cultural worldviews and seek self-esteem through culturally approved channels. This unconscious defense mechanism helps buffer the anxiety that arises from our unique human predicament, being intelligent enough to foresee our own demise. But here's where things get particularly interesting. While fleeting or unconscious reminders of death can trigger defensive reactions, from nationalism to materialism, deliberate, conscious contemplation of mortality often produces the opposite effect. When people engage thoughtfully with their finitude, research shows they often become more generous, more appreciative of simple pleasures, and less attached to extrinsic status markers. Consider the work of neuroscientist Judd Brewer, who studies the brain's posterior cingulate cortex. a region that activates during craving and self-referential thinking. His research suggests that contemplative practices, including those involving mortality awareness, can quiet this region, reducing our tendency toward grasping and self-centered narratives. The result is often a state of greater presence and interconnectedness. Another fascinating area of research comes from studies on near-death experiences and terminal illness. Psychologist Kenneth Ring found that people who survive close brushes with death frequently report profound value shifts, caring less about material success and social status while placing greater emphasis on relationships, compassion, and living authentically. Similarly, palliative care physician Ira Byock has documented how the dying often achieve remarkable emotional and spiritual clarity. His work reveals that those facing imminent death typically focus on five core concerns: expressing love, gratitude, and forgiveness, accepting forgiveness from others, and saying goodbye. These priorities emerge with striking consistency across cultural and religious differences, suggesting they may represent universal human values that become clear only when mortality is fully acknowledged. What's particularly striking about this research is how closely it aligns with the wisdom of ancient traditions. The Stoics, Buddhists, and samurai weren't engaging in superstition or morbid fascination. They were practicing sophisticated psychological techniques that modern science is only beginning to understand. Perhaps most compelling is research on post-traumatic growth. The finding that many people who face life-threatening situations emerge not diminished but transformed, with greater appreciation for life, more meaningful relationships, enhanced personal strength, recognition of new possibilities, and spiritual development. Psychologist Laura King's work on the death positivity movement shows that people who engage regularly with mortality awareness often report greater life satisfaction and purpose. Her study suggests that death contemplation serves as a powerful meaning management strategy, helping us clarify values and prioritize what truly matters. These scientific findings have profound implications for how we might live. They suggest that our modern tendency to sanitize, medicalize, and distance ourselves from death may be robbing us of a vital psychological resource. By relegating death to hospitals and funeral homes, by using euphemisms instead of direct language, by consuming endless digital distractions that keep mortality awareness at bay, we may be sacrificing the very clarity and purpose that make life meaningful. Consider how differently we might approach our daily choices if we regularly practice conscious mortality awareness. Would we still postpone joy for some future date that may never arrive? Would we remain trapped in unfulfilling careers simply for status or security? Would we leave important words unspoken to those we love? The research suggests we would not. It indicates that regular, intentional confrontation with our finitude serves as a powerful antidote to procrastination, meaningless pursuits, and relationship neglect. As Memento Mori practices help us metabolize our existential anxiety, we become more capable of living with integrity, presence, and courage. As we move forward, we'll explore how these insights might be translated into practical daily practices suitable for contemporary life. We'll examine how individuals across diverse backgrounds are incorporating mortality awareness into their lives, not as a morbid exercise, but as a pathway to greater vitality and purpose. The scientific evidence is clear. What the ancients knew intuitively, we now understand empirically. Memento Mori isn't about cultivating fear or despair. It's about using the fact of our mortality as a clarifying force that cuts through distraction and reveals what truly matters in the brief, precious time we have.